So I finally went out and dropped a Doombringer from Duriel, which was pretty hyphy. I'm glad that I got it because it was one of the uber uniques that I was kind of afraid that if I didn't have this, ultimately it was going to be required for Abattoir of Zir, and I was gonna be like, oh, I don't have it, like I can't get over that last hump of survivability. Since using it on just like the plain Infinimus build, where I just swap out Ultimate Shadow to a different aspect, and then I use this, it felt kind of okay. My clear speed was obviously down, which makes sense, right? It's a item that gives you a bunch of maximum life and reduces damage. The interesting part though was that I really wanted to like sit down and get an understanding of how effective the lucky hit portion of it was. And I'll let you know, this video actually isn't about Doombringer at all. It's about Metamorphosis and the fact that I think that there's some incomplete information out there about how Metamorphosis works. But if you are unaware, Metamorphosis adds a damage component to your evade skill. And just like we saw with Bone Prison, where that had a very weird lucky hit coefficient, because to apply vulnerable, it actually fires out invisible missiles that don't do damage, but do hit the target. And because it's hitting the target, it's a skill that doesn't have a naturally coded lucky hit coefficient. So my understanding is that it just had a lucky hit coefficient of 100%. And weird things have been happening with Metamorphosis as well. It's been proccing lucky hit incredibly high rates. So I wanted to go out and actually do some math. What is the lucky hit chance of Metamorphosis? Because it's not 100%. Well, it is 100%, but it's not guaranteed lucky hit, which are two very, very different concepts. So, welcome to my very short TED Talk about how lucky hit works, how to calculate lucky hit, and what's going on with Metamorphosis, with my most favorite thing ever, Google Excel sheets and very simple tests being done on this target dummy. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First, we need to understand what lucky hit chance even really does, and I've made a ton of videos about the differences between like instantaneous damage versus channeled instances. You might have seen my decompose video recently, as well as like the differences between a damage over time effect versus an instance of damage. But let's go ahead and simplify it way down, just because I don't necessarily see people calculating their base lucky hit chance correctly when it comes to the game. So we're going to use Blight as our example. We're going to put on some amounts of additional lucky hit chance, and we're going to use Doombringer as the lucky hit effect, just so we can keep the math very simple and we can kind of very quickly articulate what the numbers all mean together. In our base example, we're going to have a 40% lucky hit chance from Blight. I'm not talking about the impact, I'm not talking about the difference between this and the damage over time. Let's just say Blight does one instance of damage. It has a 40% lucky hit chance. So what are the chances that Blight procs Doombringer? The math is very simple. So in our example, we're using Blight with the 40% chance to proc. We have up to a 25% chance to proc for Doombringer, and the math is very, very simple. We have our skills lucky hit chance, denoted as a decimal, because 40% is equal to 0.40. We have 0% lucky hit chance bonus, also denoted as a percentage or a decimal. And then we have a 25% chance or 0.25 chance here for the lucky hit ability of Doombringer. And when you put that all together, that means that it's going to occur 10% of the time. And it's really simple, right? 25 is 1/4, like 4 quarters in a dollar. So 1/4 of 40 is 10, because 10 multiplied by 4 is 40. The math adds up, the basic arithmetic all works, the math is mathing. But it basically means every time I hit a target with Blight, there's a 10% chance that Doombringer is going to go off. Now, because Doombringer is a lucky hit chance itself and not a skill, Doombringer cannot recursively trigger Doombringer. So Doombringer doesn't then have a 25% chance of proccing itself on the same target. These things don't go infinite. That's not how that works. It's very similar to how Andariel's Visage, the poison damage over time, doesn't proc X-Falls because it's not a skill that's proccing. Versus when an aspect modifies a skill. So the Blood-Soaked aspect adds a damage over time component to Blood Mist. That damage over time component uses Blood Mist's skill coefficient for lucky hit. Just give you an idea of how these things work together, right? So very simple, there we go, easy peasy. Now let's go ahead and look at whether or not we add on some lucky hit bonus. And luckily for us, at least for the base lucky hit bonus, the tooltip continues to include this information. So right here, I have some gloves. They have 16.5% lucky hit chance. That goes into our bonus. The bonus is detailed down here, lucky hit chance bonus. So 16% bonus on 40% is roughly 6, somewhere around 7, like 6 point something percent. So we should assume that Blight will now show us about 46% chance. And it shows us 47% chance because it's going to roll up. But let's go ahead and input this number into our equation to see what the true chance increase on Doombringer proccing is. So we have our 40% here. We're going to add in our 16.5% lucky hit bonus. That brings our bonus up to 12%, because the equation, if you can see it here, is lucky hit multiplied by 1 plus my lucky hit bonus as a decimal, multiplied by the lucky hit effect. So this just slots in as multiplied by 1 plus it. That's just how you add on an additional percentage. So if you're thinking about critical strike damage as a basis increases your damage by 50%. That means you take your base damage and multiply it by 1.5. What is that? 1 plus the percentage increase as a decimal. Boom, the math is mathing, putting on roughly 16%. And let me get one more sig fig in here. Boom. Putting on 16.5% lucky hit chance increased our chance up to 12% of the time, which is actually pretty significant. It's nearly a 20% increase in the chance of it occurring. So that's like pretty dope. Now, if I were to continue to add on lucky hit chance from different sources, I would eventually get up to 34.2. 34.2 shows as 54 here. If I would add 34.2, which would be 342, boom, our chance is now all the way up to 13%. You might notice that we basically doubled our lucky hit bonus and only got an additional decimal point out of it. And again, let me just show some sig figs here. It's a little bit more than that, it's about 1.4, but we're not getting like huge amounts of additional chance to proc. It's still significant, but the more and more lucky hit chance that you get, not diminishing returns, that's not how this works, but you're going to see like smaller and smaller, like it's not going to look as big as it should look. But these small percentage increases are actually incredibly important because we're doing hundreds, if not thousands, if not over the course of our career, millions and billions of damage instances and skill usages. So the higher that you can get this chance, the more likely the lucky hit is, and you get an additional bonus out of it. That's why lucky hit chance builds, like the Infinimist, likes to have a minimum of 50% lucky hit chance, increasing the base chance up to 1.5 times it. So Blight would go from 40 to 60% of the time. And that's a huge increase in the overall chance of proccing any of our abilities. But I was talking about Metamorphosis. Why was I talking about Metamorphosis? Well, Metamorphosis can trigger lucky hit. And I explained that a little bit earlier, but the moment that you add a damage coefficient to an ability, this being evade, a thing that doesn't typically lucky hit, because it doesn't typically do damage. Now that it has a damage facet to it by adding on Metamorphosis, the vampire skill, and would you know what? Of course it has 100% lucky hit chance. Now, you just learned a whole bunch about what lucky hit chance means, so you already know that I don't really mean 100% chance to proc something. I mean its lucky hit chance coefficient is 100%. So let's go ahead and use that example just for the people who don't necessarily understand these two differences. But let's go back to our equation. So if I have no lucky hit chance bonus and my skill has a 100% lucky hit chance, what is the expectation with Doombringer? Well, let's go ahead and change this to a decimal of 100%, which is 1. And boom. Doombringer is going to proc 25% of the time because our lucky hit chance multiplied by our lucky hit bonus, multiplied by the lucky hit effects chance is 100 multiplied by 25%. So 25% of the time it's going to happen. Now, I can just say that, and that's pretty easy for me to say, but a lot of people have been reporting on it is a guaranteed lucky hit. If you use it, it will proc lucky hit. So let's just go ahead and look at, I have 4 evade charges. I'm going to take off all my lucky hit chance from my gear. Great. I have no lucky hit chance bonus, and I'm going to evade through this target. Boom. Didn't proc there. Boom. Didn't proc there. Boom. Didn't proc there. And it didn't proc there. Mac, what are you talking about? It literally didn't happen. You did it 4 times. You have a 25% chance to proc. Why didn't it go off? Well, that's not really how statistics work. That's not how chance works. But if you saw there, we did 2 instances of damage. If I were to sit here and do this for long enough, you would see roughly 1 in 4 times I'm going to proc lucky hit chance. Now, you don't have to believe me. I already got the data for you. I made Twitch chat and YouTube chat sit here and watch me evade through this target once every 4 seconds to give this enough time to reload all of my evade charges, and counted how many times it procced, and we got the data to back it up. So let's go back to the data sheet. Look at this, proc or no. I went down, and if you were to follow along at home and have been sitting here during my chat, I went and did it 200 times. Because if you can do something 100 times and get a pretty good estimation of what its chance out of 100 instances are, you might as well go ahead and do it 200 times. Oh, and that's when I was going to do some funky things with Excel. Don't worry about that. But there you go. I ran 200 instances of evading through this target to go get some data. So out of our total of 200 evades, I procced it 47 times. I failed to proc it 153 times, and that comes out to be a chance of 23.5. It's actually not the chance percent. This was the instance percent, meaning it occurred 23.5% of the time, which is a little bit less than 25% of the time, but that's how chance works. You don't actually get a 1 in 4. You just should expect a 1 in 4 if you're to do an infinite number of sets of data and get to the actual true average. But pretty simple, right? Like 50 times out of 200, it procced. 150 times it didn't. So 75% of the time it didn't proc, 25% of the time it did proc. Let's go a little bit further though, because you see I already have another data set right here. And I went and asked the question, what if I put on lucky hit chance? Does it actually increase the likelihood of me proccing the skill over and over and over again? Like, does it work the same way as the rest of the lucky hit chances in the game? Because if it didn't, that'd be really interesting and probably a bug. But luckily it does, and I'll just go ahead and show you what we did for that. Because I didn't want to like add in other weird stuff, because I could technically actually get like a huge amount of lucky hit chance here, but then this would be proccing corpse explosions, which could proc Doombringer, and that would make it a little bit muddy. I tossed on this, which gave us 8.1%. I tossed on my gloves, which gave us 16.5. I tossed on another ring with 8.7. And then I tossed on X-Falls. So we went and did the tests, and I ended up with 42.3% lucky hit chance, so pretty close to like 50% increase. And then the lucky hit chance with barrier, ignore that. We never gained barrier. There would be no way for me to gain barrier in easy ways that wouldn't then proc the sword sometimes. So we ran with 42.3% lucky hit chance bonus. So let's go ahead and do that math in real time. If I have my base of 100% lucky hit chance, and I multiply that by 1 plus our total bonus being 42.3, that would be 0.423. And then I multiplied that by the chance of proccing Doombringer. I end up with a 35% chance to be able to proc it, a little bit more than that, 35.57. And after 50 runs, so I didn't quite do 200 again, because I didn't really want to, if I'm going to be honest with you, we ended up with an instance percent, the amount of times that it did proc, of 40%. So 20 times it didn't proc, 30 times it did proc. So significantly higher than our instances with a base 25% chance for it to proc. So it definitely outperformed our 35% chance here a little bit. But there you go, pretty cool. We can increase the lucky hit chance of these types of things when Metamorphosis gives Evade a damage proc coefficient for lucky hit chance, which is kind of cool, right? If you haven't seen it before, you can do some weird stuff with Metamorphosis and things like Lidless Wall. Lidless Wall says that while you have a Bone Storm active, as long as you damage a monster outside of your Bone Storm, you can generate another Bone Storm. But Metamorphosis turns your Evade into a teleport effect. Somebody tried to question me on that it's not actually teleport, and you're completely right. It is not Sorceress's capital T teleport for the purposes of triggering things that say when you teleport, but the actual movement effect of it changes it into a teleport ability. What do I mean by that? When you typically evade, your character is there the whole time. So as I'm jumping through here, I was here, then I was all of these positions, and then I was in this position. At any point, if I were to like travel over a missile at this point, I could be hit by it because you are there the whole time. Whereas if I toss on Metamorphosis, I gain the ability to teleport. You'll see that I'm here, there's a cool animation, and then I'm here. Here's the fun part though, I'm actually there until I'm here. If you have been playing with Metamorphosis for long enough, you'll notice that you've evaded and died back here. You might have been like, oh, that was weird server lag. No, you are just here until you are here, and then you're here. Why is that interesting though? Because you become a missile that deals damage, or at least you fire a missile. The missile that moves you from here to here is the thing that's used to track where you do damage to and whether or not you've passed over a target. And because you're here until you're here, but the missile is traveling, you can drop Bone Storms right where you are. I'll summon a Bone Storm, and I'm going to evade. And now there's a Bone Storm here. Isn't that interesting? I was there the whole time. The Bone Storm travels with me. But if you notice, my Bone Storm goes away while I'm teleporting because I'm still here. And then I'll be there. And then the Bone Storm needs to be there. But the missile that I am, while I'm traveling during this teleport, can deal damage. And since it can deal damage, and there's no Bone Storm there yet, I can drop a Bone Storm where it was. So you can literally evade right on top of yourself and create a Bone Storm on top of yourself on the target. Now, this doesn't like go weirdly recursive. It's not like I can keep doing it and dropping more Bone Storms, because there's already an actual Bone Storm there from the item Lidless Wall itself. But if you haven't been using this to your advantage, it's incredibly easy to proc Lidless Wall from evade, because the evade has a base coefficient of 100%. Your lucky hit chance bonus will increase this chance, and then Lidless Wall typically has a pretty high chance of it occurring as well, similar to Doombringer. So I do this, I jump over the target, and I leave behind a Bone Storm. It's weird. That probably shouldn't work like that, but it's cool that it does, and you can use it, which is ultimately what's the cool part about testing out things like this, is getting a better understanding of what happens here. Because it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens damn near close because your base lucky hit coefficient is so high. This is how people are proccing Mendeln with it. This is how people are proccing Hewed Flesh to be able to generate corpses. If there were no corpses here and I were to evade over this, you would see the generation of a corpse at a pretty high chance, especially on bosses, since Hewed Flesh doubles its chance against a boss. So it goes from 12 to 24%. And then your lucky hit chance is minimum 100. So 1 out of 4 times that you evade over a target, you're dropping behind a corpse. That's probably why Flickerstep has felt so good over the entirety of this season for a lot of people, because you've been proccing Abhorrent Decrepify with it, you've been proccing Hewed Flesh with it, you've been proccing things like Doombringer without even really noticing it. You even have a chance of proccing lucky hit chance to restore primary resource. So while you've been diving through with Tibalt's and getting that resource, let's say you had it on here or even on your shield, you've been proccing that too. We've been getting so many free procs from the fact that Metamorphosis has a lucky hit chance coefficient that I am literally terrified for when Metamorphosis leaves in season 2, because a lot of things have been overperforming because of the fact that merely evading through these targets, which is typically supposed to be a sacrifice of action economy for the purposes of gaining survivability, has actually just been an amazingly powerful action economy benefit, because it procs all your lucky hit and it deals damage and it can proc things and it can apply vulnerable, it can leave a Bone Storm behind. It's pretty nutty, honestly. But there you go. I just wanted to put out this video, one, to cover lucky hit chance, so, you know, just in case you didn't have that information, you can have that now. Go over Metamorphosis and talk about all of like the ridiculous interactions that you probably haven't been fully conscious of, but you just noticed that your builds have felt really, really good. That's why. But as always, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. I hope that you can enjoy, appreciate, or use this type of information and this type of deep level analytical experience and like theory crafting and just general approach to playing the video game. I hope that helps you out. And as always as well, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, I would super appreciate that. That helps YouTube to know that other people want to see this kind of stuff. I think it might help out some people. I don't know, you know, call me lacking in humility here, but I think this kind of stuff really helps people out, be able to better pilot their builds and to feel more confident in why they're making the decisions that they are at any given time. Thank you so much. That's enough of me shilling for myself. I really appreciate you checking out this video. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next one.